When you think of old coins, you might picture Spanish doubloons or Roman denarii. But, halfway across the world, in the islands of Indonesia, a completely different story was unfolding. Long before Europeans arrived, sophisticated kingdoms were already making their own money. We're talking about the 9th century, a time when powerful empires like the Srivijaya and Mataram controlled the seas. They needed a way to trade, to tax, and to show off their power. The answer was silver. It was rare, it was valuable, and you could make beautiful things with it. These weren't your typical round coins though. The earliest ones were something special. These first silver pieces are known to collectors as massa. Now, these weren't coins like the quarters in your pocket. They were often small, lumpy pieces of silver, sometimes shaped like little beans or wedges. Think of them as a standardized weight of precious metal. One of the most famous early types is the sandalwood flower coin. These tiny silver pieces, often smaller than your pinky nail, were stamped with a simple 4-petaled flower design. It's a beautifully simple and elegant solution to a complex problem. How do you create a trusted form of money that everyone can recognize and use for trade? The silver itself likely came from various sources. Traders from India and China brought silver with them, which was then melted down and reformed by local artisans. The purity of the silver could vary quite a bit, which is something we always have to test for at the shop. A coin from one village might have more silver than a coin from another. This is where the reputation of the king or the kingdom came into play. A powerful ruler would ensure their coins were of a consistent weight and purity, making them more desirable for merchants traveling through the busy ports of Java and Sumatra. For an American collector, it's a bit like looking at the earliest colonial coins, like the Massachusetts silver shillings. Those pieces, like the pine tree shilling, were born out of a practical need for a local currency. They weren't perfectly uniform, and they represented a bold step away from relying on foreign money. The Indonesian massa coins served the exact same purpose. They were a declaration of economic independence and a vital tool for building the massive trade networks that made these ancient kingdoms incredibly wealthy. Finding one of these little silver pieces is like holding a piece of that forgotten history. As the centuries rolled on, the designs of Indonesian silver coins started to get more complex and interesting. The simple flower stamps gave way to more elaborate symbols. Around the 13th century, during the peak of the Majapahit Empire, you start to see coins with different shapes and markings. This was a golden age for the archipelago. The Majapahit controlled a vast territory and their influence spread far and wide. Their coins needed to reflect that power. You see, a coin isn't just money. It's a tiny billboard for the kingdom that made it. One of the most fascinating types of coins from this era is the Ma coin. These are silver and gold pieces stamped with a single character from the Nagari script, which looks like the letter Ma. Experts believe this might stand for the name of the kingdom or the ruler. What's really cool is their shape. They weren't always round. Some were square, some were rectangular, and some were just irregular little nuggets. It shows a different philosophy of what a coin should be. In the West, we got obsessed with perfectly round coins early on. In Indonesia, the weight and the stamp were what mattered most. Then you have the Banten Sultanate on the western end of Java. They were a major hub for the pepper trade, and they made their own unique coins. Their silver and copper coins, called pitis, often had intricate Arabic script on them, reflecting the growing influence of Islam in the region. These weren't high-purity silver coins like you might think. Many were debased, meaning they were mixed with cheaper metals like tin or lead. This was a common practice worldwide. When a kingdom needed more money, they'd stretch their silver supply by mixing it. It's the same reason a 1965 US quarter isn't 90% silver anymore. For someone used to American coins, where a dime is a dime and a quarter is a quarter, this variety is mind-blowing. Imagine going to a market where you might pay with a silver bean, a square piece of metal, or a coin with a hole in the middle. It was a dynamic and complex monetary system that perfectly suited the diverse, trade-focused world of the Indonesian archipelago. Each little piece of silver tells a story of a different kingdom, a different religion, and a different point in the incredible history of the spice trade. It's a numismatist's paradise. Everything changed when the Europeans showed up looking for spices. In the early 1600s, the Dutch East India Company, or the VOC, muscled its way into the region. The VOC wasn't just a company, it was practically its own country. It had its own army, its own ships, and it even minted its own coins. At first, they tried to use their own Dutch money, but the locals weren't having it. They were used to silver, and they trusted certain types of coins. The VOC quickly realized that to control the trade, they had to control the money. So they started bringing in massive amounts of silver. The most important coin in this whole story is the Spanish dollar, also known as the piece of 8. This was the US dollar of its day, a big, heavy silver coin trusted all over the world, from the Caribbean to China. Indonesian traders loved them. The VOC imported millions of these coins to pay for spices like cloves, nutmeg, and pepper. They would often counterstamp these Spanish coins with their own VOC mark to legitimize them for local use. Finding a Spanish dollar with a VOC stamp is a real prize for a collector. It's a coin that tells a story of global trade and colonial power. But the VOC didn't just use other people's money. They started minting their own silver coins specifically for the Indies. They set up mints in the Netherlands that churned out silver ducatons, guilders, and stuvers. One of the most common was the silver ducaton, a large impressive coin often called the silver rider because it featured a knight on horseback. These were high-purity silver coins designed to compete with the Spanish dollar and win the trust of local merchants and rulers. The Dutch were masters of business, and they knew that good money was good for business. This flood of new, standardized silver coins had a huge impact. It gradually pushed out the older, local Javanese and Sumatran coins. The VOC's money was consistent, reliable, and backed by immense military and economic power. It's very similar to how the US dollar became the world's reserve currency after World War II. Power and trust go hand in hand. The arrival of the VOC and their silver coins marked the beginning of the end for the independent kingdoms and their unique monetary systems. It was the start of a new colonial economic era. After the VOC went bankrupt in 1799, the Dutch government took direct control of its territories, creating the Dutch East Indies. One of their biggest challenges was the chaotic monetary system. You had VOC coins, Spanish dollars, local copper coins, and all sorts of other money floating around. It was a mess. The government decided they needed a single unified currency for the entire colony. Their solution was the Netherlands Indies Gulden, or guilder. This was a bold move to tie the colony's economy directly to the Netherlands. Starting in the early 1800s, they began issuing a whole new series of silver coins. These were minted in the Netherlands, but had special designs for the Indies. Instead of the Dutch coat of arms, the coins featured a large crown between the denomination numbers. The inscriptions were in Dutch, but they also added Javanese and Arabic script to make them more acceptable to the local population. The key silver coins were the 1/4 gulden, 1/2 gulden, and the large one golden coin. These were hefty, well-made pieces of silver that quickly became the backbone of the colonial economy. Even smaller coins got the silver treatment. The 1/10 gulden, which was about the size of a US dime, was also struck in silver. This is important because it meant silver was being used in everyday transactions, not just for large trade deals. A worker on a plantation might be paid in small silver and copper coins. This is comparable to the US system before 1965, where even a dime was 90% silver. Having silver in small denominations gives people a real sense of holding something of value, not just a token. It builds confidence in the currency. However, the silver content of these coins didn't always stay the same. Just like in the US and other countries, the value of silver would rise and fall. When silver became too expensive, the government would reduce the purity of the coins to save money. For example, in the 1930s, during the Great Depression, the silver content in the gulden coins was reduced. Then, during World War II, silver disappeared from coinage altogether, replaced by cheaper metals. For a collector, these changes in silver content create different varieties to look for. It's a physical record of economic history. For any coin collector, the Dutch East Indies offers an amazing variety of silver pieces to hunt for. It's a field that's just full of history and, honestly, beautiful designs. One of the earliest and most sought-after coins used by the Dutch is the Leeuwendollar, or lion dollar. Minted in the Netherlands from the late 1500s, these large silver coins were actually one of the first trade coins the Dutch brought to Asia. They get their name from the big, rampant lion on the back. Now, they weren't as pure as the Spanish dollar, but they were produced in huge numbers and circulated really widely. They're so famous they even gave the US dollar its name. The word dollar comes from dalder. As the Dutch solidified their control, the coin designs became more regal. In the mid-1800s, the portrait of the reigning Dutch monarch began to appear on the coins. You can find silver gulden and their fractions with the bust of King Willem I, Willem II, Willem III, and finally, Queen Wilhelmina. Collecting a type set of these rulers is a pretty popular goal for specialists. The portraits change as the monarchs age, and the engraving quality is often just superb. The coins featuring Queen Wilhelmina are especially popular, since her long reign covered a period of immense change, from the peak of colonial power to the eve of World War II. Some of the most interesting coins are the ones that were made for specific purposes or have unusual features. For example, during the Napoleonic Wars, when the British briefly took control of Java, they issued their own silver and gold coins to keep the economy running. These Java rupees are incredibly rare and valuable. Later in the 19th century, the Dutch experimented with different mint marks to show where the coins were made, some in Utrecht in the Netherlands, some in Brussels, and for a short time, even a mint in Surabaya, Java. This is what makes collecting so much fun. It's really like a treasure hunt. You might find a common date one golden coin from 1940, and right next to it, a much rarer one from the 1850s with a different monarch. You look for small variations, like a different mint mark or a slight change in the design. It's similar to how a US coin collector might hunt for a 1909 SVDB Lincoln cent versus a common 1958 D. The history of Dutch East Indies silver is just rich with these kinds of details, offering a lifetime of discovery for someone willing to look closely. World War II changed everything for Indonesia and its money. In 1942, the Japanese Imperial Army invaded and swiftly conquered the Dutch East Indies. The Dutch colonial government collapsed, and with it, their currency system. The Japanese immediately began issuing their own money, both paper notes and cheap low-value coins made from metals like aluminum and tin. Silver completely vanished from circulation overnight. People hoarded whatever old silver gulden they had, knowing that this new invasion money was basically worthless. The real value was in the precious metal. This is a classic wartime story that you see all over the world. When a government is unstable or an economy is in crisis, people lose faith in paper money and flock to gold and silver. It's a tangible asset you can hold in your hand. An old silver gulden was no longer just a coin worth one gulden. It was a piece of silver that had intrinsic value, regardless of what any government said. Many of these Dutch silver coins were melted down to be turned into jewelry or hidden away as family savings, which is why some dates are harder to find today. After Japan surrendered in 1945, Indonesia declared its independence, but the Dutch weren't ready to let go of their prized colony. This kicked off a brutal 4-year war for independence. During this chaotic period, there were at least 3 different currencies circulating at the same time. The Dutch were trying to reintroduce their colonial gulden. The new Indonesian government was printing its own revolutionary money called the Orai, that's Oyang Republik Indonesia, and the Japanese invasion money was still floating around. It was economic chaos. In this environment, old silver coins became even more important. They were a stable store of value in a country torn apart by war. While the value of the competing paper currencies fluctuated wildly day by day, an ounce of silver was still an ounce of silver. For ordinary people, a handful of pre-war silver coins could be the difference between eating and starving. This period highlights the ultimate function of precious metals in society. When all else fails, gold and silver are the last resort for financial security. It's a lesson that is as true today as it was in the 1940s. After finally winning its independence in 1949, the new nation of Indonesia faced the monumental task of building a country from scratch. One of the first orders of business was to create a new, unified national currency, the Indonesian rupiah. They needed to replace all the old Dutch and Japanese money and give the people a currency they could be proud of. In the early years, the government mostly issued paper money due to economic constraints and the high cost of metal. But the dream of having their own national coins was very much alive. The first coins issued by the Republic of Indonesia came out in the early 1950s. These were not made of silver. They were base metal coins, mostly aluminum in denominations of 1, 5, 10, 25, and 50 sen. Remember, 100 sen equals 1 rupiah. These coins were simple, featuring the national emblem, the Garuda Pancasila, on one side and the denomination on the other. They were designed by the famous Indonesian artist and patriot, Raden Mas Soelardi. While not made of precious metal, these coins were hugely symbolic. They were the first real money of a free Indonesia. It wasn't until 1970 that Indonesia was finally able to issue its first silver coins as an independent nation. This was a huge moment of national pride. To celebrate, they released a series of stunning commemorative coins. These weren't meant for everyday circulation but were aimed at collectors and at showcasing Indonesia's heritage on the world stage. The series included a 250 rupiah silver coin depicting the Manjusri statue, a 500 rupiah with the national monument, and a beautiful 750 rupiah coin showing a Balinese dancer. These coins were struck in high-purity silver and were a declaration that Indonesia had arrived. This move to issue silver commemoratives is very similar to what the United States did. For years, the U.S. Mint issued silver commemorative half dollars, celebrating everything from the Columbian Exposition to the Battle of Gettysburg. These coins were never meant to be spent at the grocery store. They were miniature works of art that told a story about the country's history and achievements. Indonesia's first silver coins served the same purpose. They were a way to honor their culture, from ancient temples to famous dancers, and to re-establish the nation's long and historic connection to silver. Since those first issues in the 1970s, Indonesia has continued the tradition of releasing silver commemorative coins to mark important events and celebrate its culture. These coins are produced by the national mint, Perum Peruri, and are highly sought after by collectors both in Indonesia and around the world. They are often sold in beautiful presentation cases with a certificate of authenticity, much like the proof and mint sets issued by the U.S. Mint. It's a way for the government to engage with the numismatic community and generate revenue. The themes of these modern silver coins are incredibly diverse. You can find coins celebrating the conservation of endangered animals like the Sumatran tiger and the orangutan. There are series dedicated to Indonesia's independence leaders, its rich maritime history, and its hosting of international events like the Asian Games. One particularly popular set was issued in 1990 to celebrate 45 years of independence, featuring different designs on coins with denominations ranging from 2,000 to 200,000 rupiah, with the higher values struck in gold. These coins are like a gallery of national treasures. Of course, the silver coins you see today are not for circulation. The modern Indonesian rupiah coins used for daily transactions are made from base metals like aluminum, nickel, and brass. This is the same path taken by almost every country in the world, including the United States, which stopped using silver in its circulating coinage in 1965. The price of silver simply became too high to make it practical for money that people would actually spend. Silver has transitioned from being money to being an investment and a collector's item, but the legacy of silver is still everywhere in Indonesia. The word for money in Indonesian is uang, but an older, more poetic word is perak, which literally means silver. This shows how deeply ingrained the metal is in the cultural and economic history of the nation. From the tiny sandalwood flower coins of ancient kings, to the massive Dutch gulden and the modern commemorative issues, silver has always been a symbol of wealth, power, and identity in Indonesia. Every coin, no matter how small, is a chapter in that long and fascinating story. So, why should an American collector care about Indonesian silver coins? From my perspective behind the counter, it's because they represent an incredible, untold story. Most people know about Morgan dollars or walking Liberty halves, but the world of numismatics is so much bigger than that. When someone brings in a coin I've never seen before, that's when my job gets really exciting. Indonesian silver offers a whole new universe to explore, full of strange shapes, exotic scripts, and connections to a history most of us never learned in school. The journey of these coins is a perfect lesson in what makes money, money. You start with intrinsic value, lumps of silver valued for their weight. Then you add trust, with a king's stamp, guaranteeing that value. Then you see the power of global trade, as Spanish silver dollars become the dominant currency. Then colonization, with the Dutch imposing their own monetary system. And finally, you see the birth of a nation, as Indonesia forges its own currency as a symbol of freedom. It's the entire history of economics told through these little metal discs. For a savvy collector, it's also a market with a lot of potential. Compared to classic American or European coins, many Dutch East Indies and early Indonesian coins are still very affordable. You can pick up a beautiful large silver golden coin from the 19th century for a fraction of the cost of a comparable US-seated Liberty dollar. There are rare pieces that command high prices, of course, but there's a huge area for a collector to build a fascinating and historically significant collection without breaking the bank. You never know what's going to come through the door. Ultimately, every coin has a story. An 1883 Morgan dollar tells a story of the American West and the silver boom. A tiny silver Ma coin from the Majapahit Empire tells a story of spice traders, powerful kings, and a world connected by sea. These Indonesian coins are a tangible link to that past. They've survived for centuries, passing through the hands of merchants, soldiers, farmers, and kings. They survived colonialism and world wars. Holding one is like holding a piece of world history, and in my business, history is worth a lot. You just have to know what you're looking at.